Oil is a toxic substance. It is toxic down to 1 part per billion in the water column. We don't really know the extent of the damage that this will cause over the next few years and decades. We have to remember that, in Exxon Valdez, none of the ecosystems, none of the species affected by that spill have recovered fully. Many of them have recovered barely at all.
We track these issues daily. We track them all day long.
In this country and elsewhere, science has not driven our decisions. Our decisions have been driven by wishful thinking. I think we're finding the same situation here with this oil spill, and our response to that oil spill is resulting from a lack of knowledge, a lack of coordination, a lack of preparedness. We spend 1,000 times more money every year in our federal budget for space exploration than we do to understand our oceans. Knowing if there was ever water on Mars, while interesting, and that while there are values in the space system, I'm not saying that that's not worth an investment, but knowing if there was ever water on Mars, not critical to surviving on this planet. All the oceans are.
To be also clear about the types of dispersants, the one that was chosen, Corexit, was only proven 56% effective in a lab and not on Gulf crude. There were 12 other EPA-approved dispersants, and 2 of them were not as toxic and were 100% effective, and they were not chosen. That was an inside oil industry thing, because Corexit is produced as a byproduct from the refining process, so essentially selling it to themselves.
The dispersants, it's an uncontrolled experiment, and that's what scares us. I testified a year ago in Congress that we didn't have the science. We shouldn't be drilling in these deep waters if we weren't prepared. We didn't have adequate response capabilities. We didn't have the technology to clean them up. We didn't know what the impacts of spills and the cleanup methods that we had would be. That we hadn't done the science and that we didn't have the knowledge should mean that we shouldn't be drilling in the first place until we had that. This oil spill is the symptom of a bigger problem. This is one of many disasters that occur from our dependence on fossil fuels, be it asthma rates, which are skyrocketing in this country, be it the other environmental air and water pollution that occurs because of our industrial uses and our addiction to coal and to oil. It's a tough one because people want to come down and they want to clean birds, and they want to come down and clean the beaches, and of course you have to be trained to do that. It is a hazardous hazardous material. This oil is toxic. It does require training. There is a lot of red tape, and I must say there's a lot of frustration here on the ground by local organizations that are unable to actually mobilize the thousands of people that want to take action.
Is to ask you to continue to engage in thoughtful and intellectual discussion about this issue. There are, again, a lot of anecdotal information. There are a lot of 30-second sound bites out there, and more often resources are pulled toward chasing down rumor and innuendo and other flames that have been fueled, the more difficult it will be to actually resolve some of the more specific and infrastructure issues that we have to deal with.
This oil spill is a horror. There's no question. And it will scar this Gulf of Mexico, and I think this country, for a long time to come. However, I think each and every one of us, whether we can come down to the Gulf and take action directly, have to remember that, there's a lot of talk about boycotting BP and things like that. And while, a lot of those gas stations are owned by small business owners, and it doesn't really hurt BP that much, it hurts those people. What we need to be boycotting is our dependence on oil. We need to be boycotting single-use plastic bags. We need to be boycotting the plastic bottles, of which we use enough in this country to power 1 million cars. We need to be boycotting coal. We need to be shutting off the power. We need to be living in more reasonable houses.
Well, the one simple thing that I tell everybody is just never buy a plastic bottle again. You cannot boycott BP. It's like saying boycott Japan for the few people kill some whales and dolphins, and that does not work. Those small stations, they are family owned. There was a young lady, probably 5 or 6 years old, standing on the beach. The water was closed, and she looked out and she turned to her mother, and I was just standing there. She looked to her mother and she said, "Mom, why can't I go in the water?" And I think that's a question, I know that's a question the mother couldn't answer, and the child couldn't understand why she couldn't get in the water. And I think at the end of the day,
That is what this oil spill reminds us. It reminds us of what kind of a world do we want to pass on to our children? What kind of a legacy do we want to leave behind?